What's up, guys? Happy Friday. Welcome to episode 28 of the Attachment Confessions. It's your girl Chelsea here, and as always, I am so excited to be hanging out with you guys today. And just in case this is your first time around here, let me fill you in on what the pod is all about. From the moment I discovered attachment science, everything about every relationship I had ever been in finally made sense. And now I'm figuring out what it takes to earn my attachment security and have the best possible relationships from now on. Here on the Attachment Confessions, we'll be diving into all things attachment science while you guys tag along on my attachment healing adventure. My hope is that by bringing attachment science to those of you who have never heard of it before, and by sharing my own story, you'll also be inspired to set out on your own attachment healing journey. Healing from your past and learning how to love and be loved in a healthy way is 100% possible. So, if having the best relationships of your life is your goal, just like it is mine, you're in the right place. And if you've already been listening to and loving the Attachment Confessions, if you could please show the podcast some love by leaving a 5-star rating and a review, it not only means the world to me, but it also helps get the podcast in front of other potential listeners whose minds could be blown by learning about attachment science. And while you're at it, grab my free attachment conversation guide for couples, aka your roadmap on how to talk through and discover and understand you and your partner's attachments, your needs, your triggers, all the things. Reach out to me on my Instagram at The Attachment Confessions or email Chelsea at theattachmentconfessions.com and I'll get the guide in your hands. And one last thing before we get into today's topic, I am so freaking excited to share with you guys that your girl is back in school. Something I literally never thought I'd say after how painstakingly long it took me to get my bachelor's degree. But next stop on the unexpected path God has me on right now is working on obtaining my integrated attachment theory certification through the Cayce Gibson's Personal Development School. I've been learning so much, y'all, and I am so pumped because this program is preparing me to be able to help you guys in such a deeper way. So stay tuned for more on that. All right, on our last episode, we kicked off our summer guest series with a huge bang. Bev and I definitely made some people uncomfy with our convo on hookup culture. And you know what? I'm okay with that. If you missed it, it's a must listen, so go check it out. On today's episode, I'm really excited for you guys to meet Kameran Al-Areqi. Cameron is a Gottman Certified Marriage Coach. She's a straight shooter, she's hilarious, and she's got so much practical insight when it comes to creating the relationships that we all want. So, let's listen in on my convo with Cam on how to stop struggling with communication and finally create emotional safety in your relationships. All right, Cameron, thank you so much for joining the Attachment Confessions today. I am so excited to have you.
Thanks. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, so I stumbled upon your podcast, Married and Connected, and heard your episode about communication issues in relationships and how emotional safety is really what we need to be looking at rather than the
Mhm.
communication issues themselves. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to have her on the Attachment Confessions because it was just such good insight, and you have like the best personality ever too. So I think my listeners are going to absolutely fall in love with you.
Thank you.
But why don't you just start off by telling us a little bit about you, your story, and what you do?
Yeah. So I've been coaching couples for 8 years. I'm a certified marriage coach. Mom, I actually got into being a marriage coach. I had become a life coach before being a life coach was cool. And, you throw a rock and hit five before all of that happened. And then one of my clients came to me and said, "Hey, we need you to coach our marriage. And if you don't, we're getting a divorce." So, no pressure. So I
Right.
was like, "Yeah, okay, well, that's not really what I do, but all right." And so I did. and actually found out in the middle of that I truly loved it. Now, good news for me is that 8 years later, they're still married and doing well, even
Okay.
though even though that was absolute dumpster fire of a beginning session. So, that was how I got started in it. I also was a kindergarten teacher at the time, and I had coached for about a little over a decade, between 10 and 15 years at that point, and I was good at it. I loved the children. I hated the parents. And I also knew that I could be offering the best of me in a different way to the world. And so that was not my calling. That was not my purpose. I knew that. And so I kind of started going back to what my experiences were, what I loved the most, what I was really passionate about. And one of the experiences that I had had previously to all of this was divorce. And I did not want people to go through what I had gone through when my oldest son was 2. And so he's 16 now. And so, going through that, navigating that, I didn't want people to go through that. And so now that the divorce rate is almost 60%, I am on a mission to lower that. That is the deal. I'm pretty unconventional in the way that I coach. I have some pretty strong feelings like that love languages are actually garbage or that apology languages are actually garbage, like stuff like that. And
Okay.
there's easier and better ways to approach those subjects. So yeah, hopefully that will be clear as we go through this. But yeah, that's kind of my story.
It's so funny because the journey that life has us on, we make plans and God laughs,
Yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
so
100%.
who'd have thought when you started your kindergarten teaching career that this is where you would be coaching hundreds, I'm sure, of
Yeah.
couples up to this point on their
Yep.
marriage, a
Yep.
totally different career path, totally
Yep.
different student, I guess, because
Yeah.
they're still students, but they're not
Yeah.
5-year-olds. So,
Yeah.
so interesting. Well, thank you so much for
Sometimes
sharing that.
Well, thanks. Sometimes it's the same, teaching kindergartners and teaching adults. It's the same situations, when you're
No,
teaching
right.
kindergartners, you have to share. And you can't hit your friend. And you can't yell at your friend. And you can't like things like that. And then I get into coaching couples and I'm like, you have to share. And it's not all about you. And you have to say
Yeah,
sorry. But not just sorry,
right.
like there has to be more than just sorry. You have to actually say what you did and ask for forgiveness and kind of have a plan of what you're going to do in the future. So so yeah, it's same concepts, just a little bit more elevated, you know.
Just different age range, different
Exactly.
size bodies, but same
We're all little
emotional.
kids inside big bodies. That's all it is.
Oh my gosh, that is so true. So on today's episode, we're going to be focusing on emotional safety. So many people in relationships report that their biggest problem is their communication. And of course, there are other major issues like infidelity, financial infidelity, abuse. Those are obviously huge, but for couples that aren't experiencing, drastic problems that absolutely blow up their marriages, often it's like a slow dripping faucet over time. We can't communicate. We just cannot communicate. So, share with us how you got to the point in your coaching journey where you figured out that, okay, it's not really a communication issue, it's way deeper than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So coaching, like you said earlier, yes, I have coached hundreds of couples over the last 8 years. I have a 93% success rate, meaning that when couples come to me, the very first session that we have, we set goals. What do you want your marriage to feel like? What do you want it to sound like? When you walk in every single day, from the time you leave your office, what do you want it to look like? Right. And so, do my couples and they only spend 7 to 10 months with me. So at the end of that time with me, what do you want that to look like? And then whether or not you're successful and whether or not my success, like that success rate at the end, do you have that marriage that you wanted on day one with me? And so 93% of couples do. Okay. The other 7% either one person decides, you know what, I actually came into coaching thinking that you were going to tell my spouse that they sucked. And now that you've told me that I need work too, then I don't want to do this anymore. So they either fall off the map that way or wildly, I have had a significant amount of people that pay me and then just don't show up. They just don't come. So it's
They
very
don't
weird.
even, like, they just no call, no show
Yeah,
your
just
sessions?
they just fall off the map. Like I'll
Wow.
email, "Hey, how you doing? Do you need help?" Blah, blah, blah. Nothing. Like, no response. So that's the 7% that fall off, which
Dang.
is really wild to me. But anyway,
But it's such a small percentage, so that
yeah,
is incredible that you're
yeah.
able to make that big of an impact in people's lives.
Well, and this is the thing is that after coaching that many people, this is what I started to realize pretty early on is that the nuances of people's marriages are different. You know, how many kids they have, where they live, how much money they make, things like that. Or even like, the teeny tiny little things that they fight about. But the big things are all the same. They're all the same. And so when people come and they say, well, we just don't communicate well, this is what they're talking about. You've communicated since you were probably 2 years old, maybe even before that, right? So you
Mhm.
know how to communicate. The biggest pieces, though, come down to the fact that as a society, as a whole, this entire world, we don't listen well. We listen to respond. We don't listen to understand our partner. The second part is that we get into marriages and we think we're equipped to be in a marriage. We think that we are ready to be in a marriage, that we're mature enough to be in a marriage because we're old enough to be in a marriage. That's not true. Maturity is not guaranteed with age. I
Right.
know 75-year-olds that are still super immature, right? So the deal is, though, that with this, that comes into the third part. The third part is your attachment. You're going to have the same marriage that you were conditioned to have, basically. So if what you saw with your parents wasn't safe, if you saw your parents have a lot of arguments or a lot of disconnect, that's what you're going to replicate because that's what you were conditioned to have. So if you saw physical abuse, even though you grow up and you're like, no, I am never going to do that, the chances of you replicating that are actually really high. So that's the thing is that we're not choosing the type of relationship that we want. We're actually just kind of living on autopilot. And so it's not a communication thing. It is a safety issue. It is an emotional safety issue. So yeah, that's why I was really excited when you called and said, "Hey, can we have this conversation because yes, I would love to get this out."
Oh, I think it's so imperative for people to hear this conversation because even whenever I was listening to your episode, I'm like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. And honestly, how it all connects back to our attachment styles.
Yeah.
So, can you just define what is emotional safety, like on a base level, so that we kind of know moving forward what we're looking at with it?
Yeah. So instead of emotional safety, I just want to define safety in general.
Okay.
And so because that's where this starts, okay? And this is how the attachment style gets into it. So safety in a relationship is can your partner count on you? Can they know? So if you're looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, your base level, in order to survive, you have to have food, clean air, clean water, shelter, that kind of thing, right? You have
Hmm.
to have basic homeostasis. But the next rung up is safety. Do you know that you aren't going to lose your job tomorrow? Do you know that your partner, and this is where the attachment style comes in, do you know your partner's not going to leave you? Do you know that you are safe in that relationship? That your life is safe? 80% of the people that die, usually like that are murdered by a spouse or an ex-spouse. 80 freaking percent. So
Oh
do
my
you know
gosh.
that your life is not in danger with this person? Do you know that you have money in the bank and that your partner's not like running some random crime spree behind your back with the money that's in your joint account, right? Do you know that and here's where the emotional safety part comes in. Do you know that you can go to your partner and talk to them about anything, literally anything, without being dismissed, minimized, you know, a general concern, like that they actually are considering you and your feelings in that, and they're not just looking at you and you feel like they don't even care what's coming out of your mouth. That they're going to listen and that they're either going to validate what you're feeling, they're going to give you advice if needed, they're going to listen. You see what I'm saying? So they're going to turn towards you instead of turning away from you. Do you know that? Do you have that? And if not, that's where we need to start. So it's not a communication issue. It's a safety issue in one of those areas.
Okay, great. Thank you for explaining that. So, the root of emotional safety is our attachment due to our parents' emotional attunement level or lack thereof whenever we showed big feelings. So, can you go into how each of the individual attachment styles form based on the emotional safety that they experienced or didn't experience from their
Yeah,
parents?
that's a really good question. So, as a baseline, obviously, the goal is that we're all secure, right? And for a relationship that is secure, none of your core wounds drive the baseline behavior because you've worked through all of that. You have the security, right? So the mindset going into a relationship for a secure behavior, because again, this is what we're working for, okay? This is what everybody wants, is that relationships are generally safe, that they're rewarding, that they're collaborative, they are reciprocal, and that you have this basic feeling of, I am worthy of love, and others are capable of loving me. And if it doesn't work out, yeah, it's going to suck, but I'm going to be okay. Now, here's where the emotional safety comes in for that. It is a baseline assumption, not a prize to be earned, okay? It's not a trap to avoid. All right? That's the key there. Because for an anxious preoccupied, that's what it is. Oh, you're listening to me. Oh, you hear me. I can talk to you. That's yay me. This is going to be a really great day, right? For a dismissive avoidant, then it's going to be, oh man, she's coming to me again, he's coming to me again, they're talking to me, this is a trap, I can't, how am I going to get out of this? I need an exit strategy out of this conversation. And we'll kind of get into the fearful avoidant here in a minute. But all of that being said, when you are secure individuals, when they are experiencing a lack of emotional safety, are going to regulate their own emotions first. They're going to do it well. They're going to sit with their partner's distress in whatever they're feeling about whatever it was that they just said without taking it personally or pulling away. So that's the goal. All right. So now that we know what we're working towards, let's go backwards. So a dismissive avoidant. For a DA, going into the situation, the mindset there is I can only rely on myself. Dependence is dangerous. I need you. I want you. But also, that's just going to lead to disappointment. So if I let you get too close to me, then you're going to drain my energy. I'm going to feel trapped. I'm going to feel like I'm in a prison. You're going to control me. And this is the most important, you're going to end up exposing all of my flaws. And I'm not perfect. So my core wound there is going to be rejection and defensiveness and this childhood history where all of my needs are minimized, ignored, and shamed. So therefore, if I come to you with anything, could be just like, hey, I had a really hard day today, then that's what you're going to do to me. So I can't come to you with the fact that I had a hard day. So it's not that your partner, and it may be, okay, I can't say that it's not. It may be that your partner is not emotionally safe for you, but you're not making it emotionally safe for you because you're projecting all of those wounds onto your partner. So let's look at this like baseball. This is my signature analogy, if you will. So every time one of you goes to your partner to say something, you're pitching the ball and it's their job to bat. Now, in order to get on first base, they have to actually intercept what you are saying. So they have to hit the ball, right? And then they have to run to first base. Emotional safety is first base. Emotional safety. But here's the deal. If you are a DA, you're going to strike yourself out. You're going to hit the ball and you're going to be like, oh, wow, babe, that sucks that you had a hard day. And you're going to run away. I gotta go mow. I don't have time for this. I gotta go hang out with the guys. I gotta go play my video games, whatever the case is, because their emotions are now too big for you because you don't know how to handle yours. So that's dismissive avoidance. So now let's flip over to the anxious preoccupied. Your anxious preoccupied mindset, which is typically in my practice, this is the most common dynamic that I see, is the DA with or an FA with an AP. So with your anxious preoccupied, what's going to happen is the AP is going to think, well, I'm only safe and worthy. The worthiness is a really big filter that they have. So I'm only safe and worthy when I'm completely connected to somebody else And I love really deeply, but when others seem to have only one foot out the door, then like it feels like my skin is being ripped off my body. So I have to work really, really hard to keep them close. So when they come to their DA partner, they're asking for connection. But what it looks like is criticism, questioning, blaming, all of these things. And then when they get turned away from, because again, now you're exposing all the DA's flaws, or they're fearful of that, by the way. Okay. We don't know how to ask for connection in a way that is healthy and soothing versus a threat. Okay. So it's our nervous systems that are both on fire here. All right. So
Right.
we're worried about, the AP is worried about abandonment and exclusion and this inconsistent caregiving because that's what they got when they were growing up, where they had to get really, really emotionally big in order to be seen and heard and understood. So that's going to come out. So you're not emotionally safe for your DA because they're asking for their needs to be met, but you're not getting your needs met. See how that works? Now we're in a loop of doom. Now, if you have an FA, the fearful avoidant attachment style, this one is actually most of the time you're going to attract another FA. So, and this dynamic is actually my favorite to work with because it's the easiest to work. It's the easiest to work through because both of you have the exact same wounds. Both of you have the exact same needs. So once you understand you also understand your partner and you can work together a lot easier. Okay. So the
Mm.
FA is, and a lot of times you're going to hear this as being disorganized as well, but the FA is, I desperately want to be close to you, but inevitably you're going to hurt me because everybody always has. So the closer I get, the more danger I'm in. But if I pull away, I'm going to be completely alone. And I don't like that either. Right. So the core wounds there are betrayal and unworthiness and relational trauma. A lot of times that relational trauma came from your childhood, which was supposed to be your source of safety, but it wasn't. So now you're looking at your partner for safety and you don't have it. And that may be because, again, they're an AP who isn't safe and they have to figure that out. APs are also, this is something else that I've really figured out, is APs are phenomenal at reading all the books and listening to all the podcasts and all the things. And they're sitting there thinking, yep, that's my partner. Yep, they do that too. Oh, yep. I need to take this to them and I need to show them. This is another reel that I need to send them, even though I've sent them 323 today and they haven't watched a single one of them. This is what I
Oh
need
my
to say.
God.
And they don't ever stop to be like, how does this apply to me? How am
Right.
I an emotionally safe person? Oh, I'm not. Okay, let me work on that before I address their dirty side of the street. See what I'm saying?
Right.
So, yeah.
Yes.
So it gets a little tricky, but that's
Hashtag
the
guilty as charged, though.
yeah.
Because I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not an AP, I'm a fearful avoidant.
Yep, I was too.
But I definitely am feeling called out with that one.
Yep. I was a fearful avoidant too. And I leaned heavily, like heavy on the AP side. So that was absolutely me too. And I had a coach that actually pointed that out to me one time. And I was like, oh, no, no, ma'am. That's not me. And the more that I sat with it, the more that I like felt like I was going to throw up. And I was like, okay, I guess that's where my work starts. And
Yeah,
sure enough. So here we are.
exactly.
The good news is, though,
Exactly.
there's hope. You can become secure. So that's
Yes. Well, the self-awareness piece, I mean, if you're just,
huge.
waltzing through life thinking everybody else is the problem, you're
Yep.
like, "Oh, but I am the common denominator in my own life and in my own
Yeah.
failed relationships, and nobody's perfect, and the majority of people don't have a secure attachment. A lot of us all have things that we need to work on, and
Yeah.
so having that self-awareness piece is what you need to be the catalyst to get anything fixed or changed or healed, so it be like that.
It'd be like that.
So, how does the emotional safety piece, obviously starting in childhood with the various insecure attachments, how each of those are formed, how that then transitions into adulthood, into our romantic relationships?
Yeah. So, like you said, self awareness is the first part of it. Like, you have to know yourself. You have to work on yourself. You cannot be standing in your yard with it being overgrown and trash everywhere and broken down cars in the driveway and yelling at your partner across the street to be like, hey, you need to mow. You need to clean up your stuff. You need to fix your stuff. It's just hypocrisy. You have to look at your traumas and you have to go through them, and this is also something that I coach with. This is something that I help you with. But you have to go through and you have to say, okay, did this happen in an age where I could have had any control at all? 95% of our attachment styles are created from birth to 3. You can't control anything when you're birth to 3. You're just trying to survive. And for a whole year of that, you're basically a potato. So, you know what I mean? Like, you got nothing there.
Yes.
So that's not something, so you have to look at that and say, okay, my parents did the best they could with what they had. So it's not their fault, but it is my responsibility to work through this. It is my responsibility to change the dynamic, to change the situation so this doesn't keep happening, so that I don't keep bleeding on people that didn't even cut me. Okay? Because they got their own things that they're bleeding from other people that cut them. Okay? So you have to look at that. And then if it is from a situation where you had, a chance to say something, maybe something happened between like 5 to 7 years old. Could you have said something to someone? Okay, if I went back and I changed this, yes, I would have said something to someone. But I can't change it. So now moving forward, I can just say something if it's needed instead of holding it in. Can I change the situation? Can I call for help? What can I do moving forward? Because I can't change anything now, right? So, emotional safety moving forward after you've worked through all of your things, this is what it looks like. And it's incredibly difficult to establish because your internal compass is highly conflicted when you still have an insecure attachment. There's a lot of the push pull dynamic that we have. I like to call it the loop of doom. So you get on this like infinity cycle where, you're asking for connection as an AP. That's only going to initiate all of the defectiveness wounds of the DA or of an FA. And then they're going to avoid, which then triggers your defectiveness wounds. So then you get bigger. And like here we are on this infinity loop of doom. So that push pull dynamic, when things are distant, an anxious side panics. Okay. And they pull the partner close. So once that closeness is achieved, the avoidance side panics because they sense this impending betrayal. All right. Or this like engulfment that they're so afraid of. And then they push their partner away. So that's the push pull dynamic. So what it looks like is both of you becoming secure and both of you realizing that like, hey, I know this is my defectiveness wound that I am bringing to the table and you know yours. So you handle you, I handle me, and we're going to come together here. We're going to have soft startups. We're going to communicate slowly. We're going to take this slow and break it down. Nothing has to be figured out right now, right? And then we're going to listen. We're going to listen to understand. We're going to not take things personally. We're going to not make whatever our partner is saying mean something about us. Instead, I'm just going to listen for what it is and collect the data. That's all it is. I'm just going to collect the data and then move forward with them to see what we can do. That's it. And I'm going to turn towards them and show them that I care and that I'm listening. That's it.
And it sounds so much easier, right? So much easier said than done, because when we are insecurely attached, 95 to 97% of what we do, what we think, what we feel, what we believe, how we act, our emotion, like our initial emotional response, lives in our subconscious, right? Only 3 to 5% of what we think, feel, how we behave is in our conscious mind. And our attachment style lives in our subconscious. So it is like an automatic autopilot response that you don't even realize what's happening until everybody has blown up in the conflict, right? In their own different ways. The AP begging for connection, the DA wishing that they were anywhere except for in front of their AP partner. And then the FA, it just, depends on their partner's attachment style, how they typically lean, right? Opposite of their partner's attachment style. Or, we're very complex. We can have all sorts of conflicting emotions within a short time span and within the same conflict, right? Where we're pushing them away for the first 5 minutes and then, oh, wait, never mind. I need that connection the next 5 minutes. And it's just like a walking contradiction. Gotta love that. But can you chat through? I know in your episode, whenever I listened to the emotional safety episode that you did, you talked about the acronym ARE. Can you
Mhm.
go through that for us?
Yeah. So ARE is accessibility. Are you accessible to them? Are they accessible to you? So again, going back to the emotional safety, can you go to them with anything that you need to talk about? Are they accessible to you or are you shut out? Okay, so we're going to think about communication like a gate. Is the gate open or is the gate closed and the wall is built behind it because of, again, attachment styles or subconscious beliefs or et cetera? All right. So when your partner is accessible to you, communication gets a lot easier because, again, they are listening. They're not just hearing you, they are listening. And those are two wildly different things. You can hear the words that are coming out of somebody's mouth easy. But are you listening to what they are saying? Meaning that are you hearing the message underneath what they are saying? Yes, their words are saying that I had a really hard day today, but this has been going on for weeks and weeks and weeks. So the message below is saying, I am exhausted. I am burnt out. I can't keep doing this. I need a new job. I need help around the house. I need somebody to step up. I need a partner, something like that. Are you hearing that message? Instead of,
Mhm.
again, getting defensive, getting whatever. Okay. So that's the first one. So responsiveness, are they going to respond to what you need them to respond to? Okay. And are they going to respond again in a way that is keeping that gate open? They're turning towards you instead of, so when you come in and you say something like, hey, I saw a bird today. I know one couple that's like, was it a hawk? Because they have like this thing about hawks. I don't know. I don't know what their deal is with hawks. But like, oh, was it a hawk? Like that's turning towards. If you're turning away, you're either giving your partner a look like, okay, and like, what's the point in you telling me this story? Or you're like, huh, okay. And you just walk off. Or is it that you turn towards them and you're like, oh, what made you think of that? What color was it? Where'd you see it? Why was it important to you? Like, why is that the thing that they're telling you? Right?
Mhm.
Are they gauging whether you're accessible to them? Are they looking for connection? Are they, like what's the purpose in them saying that? So without you
Approaching it
being,
with curiosity rather than
yes,
judgment.
exactly. Versus you being like, okay, why are you even talking right now? Right? Okay.
Right.
And then the E, engagement. So is there a dialogue there? Are you engaging with your partner? Is this something that you can connect over? This is what people don't realize. Connectedness, you can bid for each other's connection over 100 times sitting across from each other at dinner. 100 times. This is a touch on the arm. This is, oh, do you like your meal? What'd you get? Do you want to get two different things and then share? Like it's a look. It's a you guys are across the room from each other and you can just give your partner a look and then you're like, "Okay, well, it's time to wrap it up." Because your partner's like, "If I have to stand here and talk to Aunt Susie for another 7 minutes, I'm going to choke her." Kind of situation. Like you just know. You just know, right? That's that connectedness. And so this is the engagement that you have with your partner. And you only get that through having emotional safety and through having all of these connected conversations and realizing that men and women connect in completely different ways. And like being okay with that versus, again, being defensive or being judgmental for it or what have you. And so, yeah, the ARE is really important to a relationship.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's just wild to me because so many people, you'll just see them totally dismissing their spouse
Yep.
with like treating them like they're idiots. And it's like, what do you get out of that? What is your purpose for treating them? And it's also like when they get in a room of other people, they'll take little jabs at their spouse and like think it's funny to kind of like embarrass them or belittle them. What do you think the reason is for that?
Motive. Everything that you do, you have to check your motive in. Why are you using the tone that you're using? Why are you using the word choice that you're using? Why are you doing the things that you're doing? Is it for attention? Is it to fit in? Is it that you're trying to protect yourself? Because maybe your partner said something to you on the way over to that function and it didn't land right, or it made you upset, or what have you. And now, like, you're trying to get back at them. You're trying to
Mm.
make yourself look good in front of all these other people where, how your partner feels or how they look. It's a lack of consideration there. It's self-centeredness. There's a lot of reasons, but the motive is the most important thing, and this is one of those things that you were talking about earlier with the subconscious. 3 to 5% of what we do is in our conscious mind, but we're doing it over. You have 60,000 thoughts, and 80% of those are the same thoughts that you had yesterday. So the thing about that is, like, this is why when you're driving home, you're like, "Oh, did I go through that stoplight? I don't remember going through that stoplight, but I know I did because that's the way I got home, and that's the way I get home every day." Right?
Right.
It's the exact same thing. This is the whole thing. So when people say it's easier said than done, it's actually not. It's actually easier done than said. You just have to bring it to the forefront of your mind, because when you know what the problem is, you're thinking about what you're doing and you're making a radically different choice in that moment. And that's all that life is. It is a series of experiences, moment to moment to moment to moment in our linear time that we live on, right? So subconsciously, it's only easier said than done when we're living on autopilot. When we're living consciously, it's actually easier done than said, because we're looking at what we're doing and, again, checking that motive and getting over ourselves. We're not making it mean something about us. We're being others focused versus self focused. Difficult, also imperative.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess it's easier said than done for the people that refuse to take ownership of their side of the street or accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that you had mentioned in that podcast episode was 90% of conversations or
Mhm.
conflict end the way that they start. Can
Yeah.
you dive into that a little bit for us?
Yeah. So, what people need to understand about conflict is that people will say a lot like, "I'm afraid of confrontation." You don't need to be afraid of confrontation, because if you reframe the definition in your head, to confront just means you're bringing the cons to the front. That's it. That's it.
Mm.
Okay? So when we reframe that, when we reframe that in our mind, we're thinking, okay, we're just bringing the cons of the relationship right now to the front, and we're having a discussion about this, right? There's no need to fight, there's no need to yell. If you're an AP, there's no need to get big, okay? We're seeing each other, we're hearing each other, we're understanding each other. Now, what we also need to understand is conversations 90% of the time are going to end the way that they started. So if you go to your partner and you have a soft startup, like, "Hey, babe, is now a good time to discuss the budget or the second child's behavior?" Because let's be honest, if you have children, it's always the second child, it's never the first. All right.
Hey, I'm the
So,
second child,
and
Cam.
it was
Come
probably
on.
you. I'm just going to be straight. I was the first child. I was the one that my parents were like, "Don't do that again." My brother, on the other hand, was like, "Oh, you said not to do it again? Cool. I'm going to do it 5 more times and see if I can do it bigger and better every time." Okay. Here we go. So And now I have a second child, and my life is absolutely like, those memes where it's like, I was so worried about the world being, too harsh for my kind and compassionate child. And then behind it's the second child, and it's like Hugh Jackman walking out of the building and it's blowing up behind him. That's my life. That's my life. So, yes, second child is absolutely the sweetest child you could ever have, but he is a Sour Patch. Like, he will have no problem cutting you and being like, peace out, Girl Scout. I don't even care. So, yeah. So it's always the second child. But anyways, besides that point, so when you walk in and you're having this soft startup and you're like, hey, is now a good time to talk? Or when you use words, and here's the sentence framework. Now, if you're driving, please do not write this down. Please come back and, take notes later. But the sentence framework that I always teach my clients is an I feel statement. Okay. I feel. Now, this is really important because most adults confuse an I feel statement, like an emotion, with a circumstance or a scenario. Okay. So you can't go in and say, I feel like you are a jackwagon and this is why, right? That is not an emotion. All right. So when you go in and you say, I feel, that needs to be followed up with an actual emotional word that you can get from like an emotion wheel or something. So I feel frustrated. I feel annoyed. I feel angry. I feel abandoned. I feel embarrassed. Something like that. Not I feel, and then you give it a scenario of your partner. All right. This has nothing to do with your partner right now. So little disclaimer there. But I feel embarrassed when. Now you can give the scenario kindly, all right? And then tell why, all right? So I feel when, because here is what I need. So, for example, and this does not have to be like a long drawn out thing. So if you're a DA listening to this, which you probably aren't, you probably have this sent to you by your AP or FA partner. But if you are listening to this, here's how this sounds. This does not need to take a long time. Hey, I feel really frustrated when you don't call when you're going to be late because I always watched my mom make dinner and my dad would always come home after it was cold, and it felt like her effort to make dinner was never appreciated, and I feel the exact same way. I need you to send a text 15 to 20 minutes before you leave the office so I know when to start dinner. I need you to send a text if you're going to be late. Something like that. Okay? Very short. That took like 9 seconds. Does not take long at all. But once you get that framework down, now you're starting softly. Hey, here's how I'm feeling. Now, if your partner, here's something that you need to work on, okay? Especially if you are the DA or if you are an AP that just has a lot of defensiveness as an emotionally triggered behavior. If your partner says, I feel, that is automatic grounds for you to take your ego, tie it to a stake, and burn it. Because they are not making this about you. They are saying what they feel. And that should never be called into question. It should never be something that you try to have a rebuttal on. It should never be something that you jump in and are like, well, that's your problem. Or I'm sorry you feel that way. We're not doing that. That's not healthy relationship behavior. And that right there is that 10% that makes the conversation completely end in a different way that it started. If your partner comes to you and they use that soft startup and they say, hey, is now a good time to talk? Okay, here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I'm noticing. Here's a pattern that I'm seeing. And they're bringing it that way. That is an opportunity for an exchange and a conversation. The only way that it can go and end the exact same way it started is if you kill the ego, the defensiveness, the judgment, all of that.
Yeah. Because when people just come in guns a-blazing, it's usually not going to end on we love each other and we are on the totally same page and understand each other.
Exactly.
Like, it's going to end not great, just the way that it started.
This is where the AP needs to do some work too. Because again, where, like we talked about earlier, if they're going in and their way for asking for connection is through blame, shame, criticizing, questioning, all of that, and their partner now feels interrogated, how did you expect that to end? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you're just directly beating down their core wounds and their core fears right there. Like, you're just setting those on fire. So for that, like, if you go in and you say, hey, I'm just feeling really insecure and I need some reassurance. Something like that. That's going to go way better than who you talking to? What are you doing? How come you're texting? You've only been home 5 minutes. How come your phone's been glued to your hand the entire time? You know what I mean? You were in the bathroom for 45 minutes. What were you doing in there? Joining a dating site? Like, that's not going to help.
Yeah, well, and the fearful avoidant and the anxious preoccupied are known for being overly critical a lot of the time.
Yep.
Because we're overly critical of ourselves, right? So, of course, we're gonna project that. And that is the biggest point of contention for a dismissive avoidant because they're immediately gonna feel broken and not good enough and defective because that criticism wound is being triggered. But oftentimes, you'll get an FA or an AP say, I was consciously putting in my best effort to not come across critically, and they still took it critically. How would you recommend an anxious, preoccupied, or a fearful avoidant when they're approaching their DA partner who often takes something as criticism, even if they are trying to package it in the most non-critical way?
Yeah. So this is where you're going to have to be really, really careful of word choice. Okay. So there is a very subtle difference between criticism and complaining or just bringing something to someone's attention. So when you are criticizing, you're addressing the person as a whole versus if you're complaining, you're addressing a behavior. So when you're complaining, and complaints, by the way, this is one of those other things that I think that, again, because of conditioning, we believe that complaints are bad, and this is where that conditioning for a DA comes in, is that it's, well, if you're complaining that I'm a horrible person or whatever. No, no. Complaints are actually good because if you don't say what's not working for you in the relationship, if you don't, again, bring those cons to the front, then what happens is you're laying bricks of resentment, just brick after brick after brick until you get this wall with no window, no door, and no access to your partner. And that's then where divorce comes in. So, what we need to be doing though, if you're the one bringing the con to the front, is be really careful of your word choice and don't use the word you. Don't ever use the word you. So, the difference would be like if they say, you didn't take the trash out because you're a lazy POS, now we're criticizing. If you say, hey, it really frustrates me when the trash doesn't get taken out when I ask for it to be taken out because we always miss trash day. It stinks. It's overflowing. It's dirty. There's bugs, whatever the case is, right? It makes me feel like the house isn't like I'm not doing a good enough job as a wife or a mother to clean up the house, whatever the case is. But notice the differences there. Hey, it really bugs me when this happens versus you didn't do this. Or a lot of times, we think we're not being critical, but the
Mm.
tone comes out. I used to be the most condescending person in the world. I actually didn't even know that that was a thing. I didn't know that I was being condescending because that's what I grew up hearing all the time.
Mm.
So when I was working with my coach was actually the one that said, Cam, when you use uptones, that's when the condescension comes out. But when you use downtones, that's when you're just teaching, telling, explaining, all that. It was like the biggest light bulb moment I've ever had in my life. And so I actually had to start recording myself. This is something else that I would highly recommend to couples. Record yourself. Number one, you're going to use better behavior just because you know you're being recorded. But number two, you're actually going to be able to see yourself and what you do. You're going to be able to see the behaviors that you're using in the middle of an argument. You're going to be able to hear the tones that you're using. And it's a big gut punch. Like it is like being kicked in the face with a golf shoe. And you watch that back and you're like, "Oh my god, I'm a monster. I need help."
That's,
Holy
like, mortifying.
yes. It is so humbling because then you realize like, "Oh my god, this is what my partner's been seeing? This is what
Mhm.
they've been experiencing of me?
Yeah.
Ew." Like, I don't even want to experience myself. And
Yeah.
so that's usually the wake-up call that people need to be like, "Ugh, I gotta get help."
Oh, yeah, that I definitely am thinking back on some of my not finer times and
Yeah.
glad I don't have a recording to
Yeah, same.
reminisce about.
Yeah, I had to
Oh,
work through a lot of
goodness.
that.
Oh, man. Um, let's chat through de-escalation in the
Yeah.
midst of a conflict and the
Yes.
importance of that because sometimes regardless of if people are actively working on these issues and their attachments, things are going to happen. People aren't going to be perfect. They might take 2 steps forward, 3 steps back every once in a while, right? So if you and your partner are in the process of having a conflict and it's reminiscent of old behaviors that we're trying to not exude anymore, what's the best way to de escalate or recognize, oh crap, we're going back to our old versions?
Yeah. So this is really important is that and again, this isn't something that this is the part that makes us unqualified to be in a relationship because these are the tools that are not taught when you're little. You're taught, "Oh, say you're sorry for taking the friend, taking the truck from your friend and then move on." And then like that's the end of it. That's not real life as you get to be an adult. So in the moment, here's the thing is that when you're truly doing the work, it's going to take you like if you're the type of person that you're having this conflict and then you sweep it under the rug and you don't ever think about it again, you are the problem. Okay? If you are the person that you're like and again, when you first start the work, don't think that it's just this linear thing of like, "Oh, I listened to this podcast and so now this is, I have all of these tools." No. How this is going to go in your life just so that you know this is that at first you're going to learn these tools that I'm going to give you and then you're going to have the conflict in the middle of it you're going to not even notice, right? But then you're going to be thinking about it an hour, 2 hours, the next day, whatever, later and it's going to be, "Oh man, I should have done this when I was in okay, so next time this is what I'm going to do." And then as you get better, like that's can happen a few times. And then as you get better, you might notice it in the middle of having this conflict and you doing these problems. But you're like, but how do I stop it? Well, that's your nervous system. Okay. So it's a lot of nervous system work. Then as you continue to get better, maybe you notice it in the middle of it and you're able to change it in the middle. Then you'll get to the point where you can, you start to open your mouth and say something you don't mean or say something you don't want. And you're able to just be like, "Oh, nope, sorry. I'm not going to say that." Okay. And then eventually you'll get to the point where you're like, you don't even need to say those things. You don't need to feel it. Okay. So that's like the ideal linear healing timeline. Now, these tools, while you're doing this, we're going to talk about like the ideal situation is where you, again, check your motive. Why are you saying what you're saying? Why are you doing what you're doing? That's the first thing. So stop, get over yourself. All right. How are you making, and that sounds so ridiculous, but it is. Anytime you are having an emotionally triggered behavior, judgmentalism, jealousy, self centeredness, you are reaching for a secondary addiction of nicotine, drugs, sugar, your phone, porn, whatever the case may be, you are reaching for that secondary addiction, trying to get over an internal feeling that you have or an emotion that you have. So, anytime you are doing this, anytime you're being childish, anytime you're slamming doors, you're throwing things, you're getting emotionally big, you're throwing an adult temper tantrum, anytime you're doing these things in some way, shape, or form, it's because the self belief in your head of whatever your partner said, whatever they did, all of it, it means something about you. You're making it mean something about you. So you have to figure out what that is. And then you have to stop and look at that. So the de escalation in the middle of that, while you're trying to do all of those things in your head, right, is slow down. Slow down. Anytime, think about it. Wrecks usually don't happen when you're driving out for a Sunday stroll at 25 miles an hour, just looking at the countryside. Wrecks happen. Oh my God, I'm late to work. And so you're blowing through stop signs, you're going too fast, things like that. Same thing in a conversation. The mistakes happen because we're going too fast that our brains can't keep up with our mouths. So slow it down. Go for a walk. This is a really big one. I love this one because when you are out in nature, number one, that's automatically going to reset your nervous system. You're not in fight or flight mode anymore. And if you are talking about really hard conversations and you're walking together in the same distance, one, you're not looking at each other. So when you're not looking at each other, you're not an automatic threat. You can only see the other person out of the peripheral. And it makes you feel, especially for a DA, makes you feel like you're less trapped. But you're also walking forward in the same direction. So it makes an AP and an FA feel like, okay, this is productive. We're getting somewhere, even though you're walking around the block. Okay, not a big deal. So go for a walk while you're having these conversations. And then take some time. Again, the only reason that conversations blow up is because we put pressure on ourselves. So if you think about this, you've got time. Unless you have some like terminal illness, in which case this conversation probably doesn't mean anything, right? So if you're looking at this, you don't need to finish this conversation right now. So take some time. Hey, I feel myself getting really flooded, and that usually means that things don't end well between us. Can we come back in an hour? Can we come back to this after dinner? Can we come back to this after we put the kids to bed? Most likely, your partner, unless they're an AP, your AP partner is going to be like, no, we need to finish it now, right? And if you're feeling that, that's your sign to be like, no, you probably do need to take some time, you know? But here's the biggest part. If you know that you have an AP partner, they need a time limit. Okay. You can't just say, oh, I can't do this right now and walk away. They are going to feel like every nerve in their body is on fire. So you have to say, I need 20 minutes. And okay, let's say in 20 minutes, you're like, nope, I am still fuming. Great. Make a phone call. Do not send a text. Make a phone call, come back to the room, whatever, and say, hey, I know I said 20 minutes, but I'm still fuming. Like, I'm really mad. Okay. I need another hour. Okay, cool. Whatever. But at the same time, also realize that as a human being, we only register emotions and feelings for 90 seconds. 90 seconds. That's it. After that, if you still have that emotion, it's because you're ruminating on it. Think about a toddler. Let's say you took a toy from them and they lose it. They're throwing a temper tantrum. You took my toy away or whatever. You give them another toy. Do something else. The distraction, like they have something else, they stop thinking about it. They stop throwing a fit. That toy is no longer relevant, right? It's only when we start to get older that we start to think, oh my God, I should have said this. Or I cannot believe that they said that to me. I cannot believe that they did this to me. Now, again, you're making it about you. You're not seeing that like, no, they hurt me because they've got their own mess to deal with. So you're ruminating on that. And that is why the feeling is still there or why it amplifies. The neuroscience behind this is that your brain does not recognize reality from what you're telling it that happened. That's how like pathological liars legitimately believe what they're telling you because they've said it to themselves so many times that it's now true.
Wow.
Yeah.
So fascinating
Yeah.
and terrifying.
And terrifying at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man. So another key aspect that you had talked about was needing to stop the tit for tat retaliation
Yeah.
that so many of us are completely guilty of
Yep.
as a defense mechanism. So talking in depth a little bit more about that piece.
Yeah. So this is where and this is really hard to accept, but this is where the hypocrisy comes in, and I see it in every single couple that I work with. And it was even really bad in my own marriage. Like, and we just didn't see it, right?
Yep.
So when you are doing things and you're complaining about what your partner's doing, you have to make 100% sure that you're not doing the same thing, and it just looks a little bit different. It's still ice cream. One is Rocky Road, one is mint pistachio. You see what I'm saying? So the thing is that when we are retaliating, a lot of times it's out of childishness. And that's an emotionally triggered behavior that again goes back to a self-belief that we have that was trauma influenced from our childhood. So the thing about this is that when we're doing this, we are looking at this as a situation where our partner is the problem. So we're blaming, which is also self-centered and childish. So when we're doing all of these things, this tit for tat, you have to stop and again, check your motive. Is this really who you want to be? Is this really like somebody has to grow up and mature in the relationship? Somebody has to be the one to say, you know what, I'm getting off the crazy train here. I am going to live into who I want to be. I am going to live into, and even if my partner doesn't do it too, I'm still going to live into who I'm saying that I should be and have that integrity. Divorce doesn't happen because of one big thing. It's usually not because, like, cheating, for example. Cheating doesn't happen just out of the blue. Cheating happens after months and weeks and years of death by a thousand paper cuts. Divorce happens because of death by a thousand paper cuts. You have cut each other so many times. And again, this all goes back to your attachment too. But it happens so often, you're helpless. You're helpless. You don't know what else to do. And so you're doing things
Yeah.
out of a defense mechanism and it's all childish. But that's why it's happening. You've hurt each other so many times that you don't know another way other than to just revert back to your childhood self and try to protect that inner 7-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah. So you alluded to your metaphor of playing baseball in the house earlier. You talked about the first base is the emotional safety.
Yeah.
Can you explain your full picture of what you mean by playing baseball in the house?
Yeah. So we talked about the fact that when your partner pitches you the ball, it's your responsibility to bat, right? Then you get to first base, you have emotional safety. You've mastered emotional safety. You're turning towards, you're validating what needs to be validated, which does not mean you're agreeing with it, by the way, just means you're validating their experience. Then you run to second base. Second base is connection. Typically, men are going to connect through shared experiences. Women are going to connect through open-ended conversation. All right. So this is why when you were dating, it felt so good to both of you because you were getting both of these in one night out. You were doing something together, you were doing an activity, but you also were having conversations, getting to know each other. Is this somebody I even want to spend time with? Right? Now, here's the thing, this is where we go wrong in marriage. We get married, we don't ever ask those open-ended conversations anymore, other than whether or not they're affiliated with a logistics or some teamwork things of like, you know, second kid has a dentist appointment, first kid has soccer, who's doing what? That kind of situation, right? The thing of it is, though, hopefully, you're not the same person that you were when you got married. Every time you've had a kid, every time you've moved, every time you've had some kind of life setback, you've changed. You need to keep getting to know each other. The number one, I'm going to give you guys the secret to marriage, okay? Friendship. The stronger your friendship, the longer your relationship will last. The weaker your friendship, or if your friendship's not existent, the higher chance you have of getting a divorce. That's it.
Yeah.
But this is how it works. If you don't know your partner for who they are right now, what's their top 5 stressors? What are their goals, short term and long term? Not just as a family, not as a couple, but as an individual. Okay. I was working with a couple yesterday and it was like this guy all of a sudden looked like he had been punched in the face. And I was like, "Are you okay?" And he goes, "Listening to her talk, I just realized that he goes, I always just thought she was boring. I thought that we had kids and all of a sudden she was just boring." And I was like, "Okay,
Gosh.
what is it actually?" And he started crying. And he goes, "I realize now she's not boring. She just doesn't get to do anything for herself because I take the time that she would be doing something for herself, and she is putting all of her time towards taking care of me and our 4 kids." And it was
Wow.
like that was a moment, like, of course, they're crying, I'm trying not to cry, like, but it was this huge light bulb moment that, like, they were so disconnected because they didn't talk. And she didn't feel like she could go to him and be like, "Bro, seriously, if you schedule another tea time for 9 a.m. on Saturday so that I can't go get a pedicure or have brunch with my girls, I am going to murder you." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this is the thing is like, we don't know those things. They've been married.
Mhm.
Their oldest is 11. So they'd been married for like 13, 14 years, and
Yeah.
he didn't know.
Yeah, that's the piece of, like, approaching your spouse with judgment instead of curiosity, so
Yeah,
you don't
yeah,
even bother asking, you don't even bother connecting, you're just like, "Oh, she's boring," and then she internalizes that, she feels that from
yeah.
him, whether he's actually saying the words or not, you can feel that judgment or that, whatever sort of negative feeling that they have towards you, and so there's no emotional safety for her
Yeah.
to even approach the situation and express her needs or her wants or her desires.
But it's that lack of
Yeah.
connectedness, like the friendship there. I mean,
Yeah.
I've worked with them. This is their third session, so I haven't worked for them with them for very long. But this is the thing: is like this is what we're realizing is we realize that our friendship is not strong because I don't ask because I don't
Yeah.
connect with them in the way that they need to be connected with. Okay, so that's
Mhm.
second base. Third base is emotional intimacy. And to basically break this down, and this is why, as a DA, DAs are terrified of emotional intimacy because you can't be fully loved unless you're fully known. But you can't be fully known unless you're vulnerable. You can't be vulnerable unless you have humility. So that ego, a DA has learned over time, again, you're going through your relationship and your conditioning is driving it, not choosing. So when you're conditioned to believe that your ego's in the driver's seat and that you're going to be hurt and that you're going to be engulfed and all of these things, that's not true. And additionally, with an AP thinks, oh, I'm so vulnerable. They're actually not. A lot of times it comes out of a manipulation and control mechanism. That's their motive. They're not actually being real. They don't actually know what they want. So they're saying whatever it is they think their partner wants to hear. It is a performance. So this is where both sides of the street have work to do. And then
Yeah,
again, with the FA, depends on whichever way you're leaning. You have the
exactly.
tendency to do both. So when you're doing these things, when you're playing baseball, you have to be able to fully know your person, trust your person. You trust them that they're not going to cheat, they're not going to lie, they're not going to, empty the bank account and disappear for the weekend or the rest of your life, whatever. Like you have to trust them. Then and only then can you get to home plate, which is this mind-blowing fireworks show of sex that we want, of the physically intimate life that we have. Anybody can have sex. 16-year-olds can have sex. But does it mean anything? No. And in a lot of marriages, I would say of the majority of marriages that I work with, it's just sex. It's not physical intimacy.
It's just
And
checking a
there's
box
Yep, it's
and
checking a box, and
Mhm.
there's something missing, but you can't put your finger on what it is. It's not a different position. It's not, that their body has changed or the performance anxiety, whatever. Yeah, that probably all is there. And also, the big thing that's missing is the emotional intimacy. And a lot of
Mm.
times for a DA, they're looking for that emotional intimacy. This is why also most men that are DAs can go out and have one night stands or cheat and it like they feel nothing. But then they're like,
Mm.
what the crap? Why do I still feel empty? Because what you're looking for, you're not finding because you're not able to be vulnerable. You're not able to open up and let someone know you and truly love you.
Mhm. Yeah, and what an unfulfilling way to live. It's so
This
sad. What would you suggest? So, say one person within the relationship is actively working on this, actively working on healing their attachment. The other partner is totally resistant.
Mhm. Yeah. This is actually usually how I do work with individuals as well, not just couples. And this is actually very effective. So it's hard though. If you are the person working, you have to give a lot of grace and mercy and space for the person who's not working because you have to understand that you're climbing a ladder and they're still sitting at the bottom willingly, right? And that is frustrating. So I would give yourself 2 years if you are married, 2 years. If you're not married and you're just dating, 6 months. 6 months for you to be working on yourself. Now, here's what's going to happen. It's not enough. A lot of people are like, ooh, knowledge is power. No, applied knowledge is power. Okay. So if you are applying what you are learning, your behaviors have changed. They're either not seeing that your behaviors have changed, they're still holding you to, the fire for who you used to be, that kind of thing. Or they're just plain like, nope, I don't have any desire to read a book. I don't have any desire to go to a marriage retreat. I don't have any desire to go see a therapist or, get coaching. Then, like I said, 6 months or 2 years, 2 years if you're married, because that's more of a commitment and a covenant there. But with that, keep doing the work, because again, we're going back to, who do you want to be? You're not doing this as a performance. You're doing this because you recognize that you have things that need to be worked through and need to be changed and need to be fixed. And you're not doing it so that they will come along and they will do the work. That's their choice. That's their journey. You can't control that. Okay. But you can, as a secure person, decide, you know what? Maybe this just isn't the relationship for me, because here's the thing, is that society has, again, tried to condition us that a relationship is for happiness. That's not true. A relationship is for growth. You are quite literally, the universe, God, whatever you believe in. Mine, I believe in God. I believe God puts us together for God to say, all right, friend, this is what you need to work on. And this is how, every time your partner triggers the crap out of you and it makes you so angry, that is a little mirror that your partner is now holding up for you to say, okay, here's what you need to work on. Here you go. And that's the work that you need to do. And once you've
Yeah.
done that, there will be something else. Okay. But both of you have to be doing that and accepting that work, instead of being like, I'm not the problem. You are. You're the one that needs help. You're the one that needs to go to therapy. If you want to
Yeah.
do that, you go. Okay, great. I will. And because of that, if you aren't willing to go with me, or you aren't willing to do this with me, maybe you're not the person that I need you to be. And you're not the person that I prefer to be in a relationship with.
Right. Because that's a problem that a lot of people face, especially with the dismissive avoidant, right?
Yep.
Is that self-awareness, that accountability, that ownership piece, and because that's painful for them.
There's hypocrisy there, because while we're looking at that and saying, okay, that's really painful for them and they don't want to do that work and they don't want to blah, 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 you also don't want to leave because it's painful for you and because you're afraid of abandonment and because you're afraid of being alone. So you're staying to soothe your nervous system while they're pulling away to soothe theirs. Same ice
Right.
cream, different flavors.
So, to land the plane, what do you want listeners to know ultimately about emotional safety from this conversation?
I want you to know that it starts with you. I want you to know that you can't have emotional safety if you're not willing to be emotionally safe. So you have to start with yourself. You have to start working on you. I want you to know that you deserve to have emotional safety in every relationship that you're in. And if you don't, there's some conversations that need to be had and maybe some boundaries that need to be set. And boundaries, they're a fence around your yard. They're what you're going to do, not, well, if you don't do this, then I'm going to do that. No, no. I am not going to be engaging in a relationship where emotional safety isn't present. Period. The end. You do what you want, but I am removing access to me if that doesn't happen. So going back to the ARE formula. And I want people to know that most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, you cannot do this on your own. You can read all the books in the world, you can listen to all the podcasts, but if you don't have the self-awareness and you don't have someone to say, okay, this is the pattern I'm seeing you do, this is how you need to change that, and giving you those tools, you're not going to have that absolute change that you need. And there shouldn't be any shame in this, but there is a lot of shame and stigma around getting help. And this is the way I teach people to listen to this, okay? You wouldn't pick up a book in a library and try to learn French just from the book because you don't know the pronunciation. That's how you get Je suis le grand fromage instead of Je suis le grand fromage. It sounds completely different. You know what I mean? One, you sound like a hillbilly hick, and one, you actually sound French. It's completely different. This is no different. Okay? You have to be qualified to be in a relationship. And in order to be qualified, you have to have a qualifier, someone who actually helps you become that. So just look at it as a language. I'm teaching you the language of being in a relationship. That's it.
We can all use that. I think the world has come to a place where we don't know what the heck we're doing, and we
Yep,
can all use that. So,
exactly.
well, thank you so much, Cameron. I really appreciate your time, all your insight. Where can listeners find you?
Yeah. So the first thing, I have a book. If you are like, hey, I need a little help in self development here and just self awareness in general, Connected to Me, The Blueprint is on Amazon. You can get it there. My podcast, Married and Connected, drops every Monday. Instagram at married.and.connected. My website, www.recognizingpotential.com. That's pretty much where you can find me. I do have a school
Awesome.
community. My school community has a ton of free resources on there, and that's Married and Connected as well. So,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect. And I will link all of those in the show notes so that listeners know where to find you.
Cool.
But thank you so much again. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's been a fun time.
Of course. Thanks, Cameron. Was I right about how awesome Cameron is, or what? I hope you got as much out of our convo as I did. There's so much gold packed into this episode. It literally applies to everybody. So definitely be a good friend and share this with anyone who comes to mind that you think could benefit from listening to Cam's masterclass in how to communicate and create an environment of emotional safety for yourself and for the ones that you love. Thank you so, so much for listening, and I'll see you guys back here in a few weeks for our next guest episode. In the meantime, happy attachment healing. Love you guys. Bye.